you spoken with Justin McCarthy regarding? No. I tried to get some information today, but
call the April 18th, 2023 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District Board to order. We have a quorum called to order. We have an agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any items that they would like to adjust on the agenda? And I'll just start. I'd like to add Driscoll Docks to the Lake Utilization Committee. The Fletcher Driscoll Docks. Anybody else have anything? Mike?
Could we move the audit up to sooner?
You know, I would say generally yes, but we're going to be there in a few minutes anyway, because there's really nothing in front of it. So I would prefer to just keep the agenda that way, and we'll just move quickly through that. But I'm not making that decision. Does anybody have any input on that? All right, we'll just move quickly then. Any other adjustments to the agenda? Okay, would anybody like to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Approval of the March board meeting minutes. Does anybody have any adjustments they would like to make to those minutes? I have just one, and it's a nit, sorry. Under item 1, roll call quorum, Mike Pronto and Susie Mahoney, it's not clear if they were present or not.
I made that change. They were absent.
Thank you. Okay, any other adjustments? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Public comments. We reserve 15 minutes for public comments on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anybody here to take advantage of that?
Hi, I'd like to make a public comment.
And just give us your name, address, that kind of stuff.
My name's Nathan Hansen. I reside at 89 Grove Street in Matamidi, very near the lake by St. Jude. And I was here at a meeting, the last meeting, on behalf of a client, and everybody knew that I was here to talk about something on the agenda, and then it moved right on, and then you wouldn't let me talk. So here, I want to complain about that. I don't think that that was appropriate. I don't think that I was treated very fairly. And I was here on behalf of a client, and I don't think that that was fair to my client, who's the Docks of White Bear Lake. And Brian McGoldrick's here today to talk about that. There were some things about the meeting that happened beforehand, a little executive meeting, that were inaccurate, that I wanted to point out, and I'm glad everybody's here today so I could say it. People said that this DNR permit that the Docks of White Bear Lake had, that the DNR messed up, and that the DNR didn't put people on notice when they did that permit. These things that were said at that meeting, and this was at the executive meeting, they weren't accurate.
Excuse me. It was actually the LUC meeting, not the executive meeting.
The LUC meting. Oh, so you were there. So there were things that were said at that LUC meeting that were not accurate, and it was impolite to not let me talk. So I just wanted to say that today. I hope when the White Bear Lake thing is on the agenda, the Docks of White Bear Lake is on the agenda today, that Brian McGoldrick, who's here in person, will be allowed to talk, and the same trick that was pulled on me will not be pulled on him. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. And just to be clear, Mr. Hanson, it's not a trick. The way that the board works is that the LUC, and I don't have any further questions for you, thank you. The LUC reviews doc applications and they bring recommendations to the board. It was mentioned a couple times at the LUC that you were welcome to stick around in case the board had questions. And the board didn't have any questions, and so we followed our procedural orders. All right. Okay, any other? All right. New business. Board appointments. Mark Wisniewski. Sorry, did I get it close? Wisniewski, thank you. New member on the board from Delwood. And Mark, would you like to just say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Family and I moved to Delwood in September, so we're new residents of Delwood and happy to be appointed to this board and looking forward to serve. We previously lived in Matamidi for the previous 16 years on the Hickory Street Dock Association. So very familiar with the lake and the permitting process for the docks.
All right, well, thank you, and thanks for volunteering to serve on the board. And Diane and my appointments were re-upped at the township. Okay. Presentation and acceptance of the 2021 audit. Would anybody like to set this up? Diane or Mike? Or?
Oh, I thought you were going to introduce them. Jim?
And I can take care of it, Mike, if you'd like.
Okay, Jim, you did the audit for us, and I know there was a lot of back and forth to get all the numbers right and everything. We appreciate your patience in doing that. And of course, Sherry's help in doing it and Diane's patience in doing it over a couple of years. So we're finally here for the 2020 audit, and we're anxious to hear it, so please.
Well, members of the district, my name is Jim Eichten. I'm with MMKR CPAs, CPA firm that specializes in governmental audit and accounting. This is been doing this type of work for over 30 years. I've actually audited your district probably, this is maybe 20 years. I haven't gone back. I didn't go back. I probably should have, but it's been a long time. So I'll just give a kind of quick, try to keep my comments brief, but give you some sort of sense as to what we did and what our process was. In the last decade or so, the Office of the State Auditor in the state of Minnesota has developed guidelines for what they define as agreed upon procedures for organizations like yourself. They've created thresholds in terms of size of governments that are required to have audits, and those that fall under that particular level of standard or revenues, I guess in this case, are allowed to do agreed upon procedures. So in the past, I've been here, we completed audits for your organization. This particular report that was issued is agreed upon procedure. The difference is the Office of the State Auditor provides us with a list of procedures, exact procedures, in fact, as to how we were to complete our process. If you read the letter and read the report, it spells out exactly what I did, and that is all guided by the Office of the State Auditor. I didn't create any of that. I guided it through that written document, but ultimately the Office of the State Auditor gives us exactly what we are required to test and how we go through those procedures. The results of the audit, the results of the agreed upon procedures are on, I think the last page, probably page 4 of the document. It says findings at the top. Ultimately, we had very limited findings when it came to this particular, audit or procedures. You'll see the note there. We had 3 findings that related to the procedures that we completed. We also listed the procedures in the earlier part of that document. We found one receipt that did not have adequate documentation. Most notably in this case, there was no receipt or bank deposit to record it or to show evidence of what the receipt was for. It was clear that it was what it was, just based on other documentation, but there wasn't fully documented results. We found one disbursement that did not have an adequate receipt for purchase. In this case, I believe it was for toner. that was purchased through a credit card, and I can clearly see how that might happen. And that particular receipt wasn't available. And then lastly, the Office of State Audit requires us to verify that you file with them any unclaimed property. So after a certain amount of time, if a check isn't cashed, it becomes unclaimed, and you're required to submit those unclaimed properties to the state as part of their process. There's a filing that is required annually to report to them your unclaimed property, and you're required to report even if you didn't have any. In this case, you didn't have any, but you didn't report as well. So it wasn't that you didn't file or submitted unclaimed property, it was that you didn't file in this case. So overall, very good results, excellent results, frankly, as a result of this process. I would suggest that in the future that the process should be sped along. You know, we're here, well, whatever it is, mid of 2023, and you're auditing, 2020. It gives you a sense to the delay in accounting and reporting that you're having, and that's not healthy, really, for an organization like this. This particular process isn't required every year. It's a 5-year process. Every 5th year, they require you to report. So you wouldn't have to hire anybody like me for another 4 years, 5 years. But ultimately, you probably should have some internal process that is looking and overseeing and doing some sampling similar to what I've done here, which is just pull some receipts, look at disbursements, make sure the bank reconciliations are being done, those types of things. But it would probably be an internal process versus an external one. So that's my presentation. I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions for me.
I'll just start with one question. So on the this timing for evaluating, let's say, a fiscal year, what would, in your mind, what would be an appropriate, like at the end of 2022, like by the end of 2023, that work would be done, or 2024? Or how? Yeah,
normally year-ended reports like this was December 31st, 2020. The Office of State Auditor's deadline was actually June 30th of 2021. That's
so about 6 months.
That's when, yeah. That's the standard governmental reporting deadline for an audit, or even in this case, it would have been 6 months. Right. So what's that, almost 2 years ago? Now, there was a pandemic in there, so a lot of things got delayed as a result. But good question.
Thanks for that. Any other questions? Mike?
Do you record your audit with the state auditor, or do we do that?
This report is filed by your office, and I believe that already took place. So the only kind of from an administrative standpoint is a good question. The board should accept the report. I mean, there should be on record that you received it. It's already been approved. Administration approves the report, so the words accept is acceptable.
Any additional questions? Mike?
How do we handle outstanding checks that haven't been cashed?
How do you handle them? In general, how do you handle them?
Is there an auditing procedure that we should follow, or is it just, they haven't been cashed?
Yeah, if somebody doesn't cash a check, there's 2 ways of going about it in normal procedure. Typically, you go out and reach out to those people and find out, well, why haven't you cashed our check in general? And if you can't find them, you can't locate them, typically the government's required to hold on to it. You can't do anything other than wait until it cashes, if you will. And then after 3 years, you have to return that over to the state. Those funds would have to be turned over to the state as unclaimed property and file with the state name, address, serial number, all those things, so that somebody, if they ever were to come forth, they would get their funds. So that's the standard.
Did you say 3 years? Sorry.
I think it's 3 years.
3 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, well, on behalf of the board, thank you for all your efforts and your service to us.
Thank you.
All right, and I think that's good.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, I know that my name is with Cheryl, and she can get anything from me that you need. So,
okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
All right.
And I'll make a motion, just to close the business, I'll make a motion to accept the accountant's report. Second. We have a motion and a second to accept the report. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. Okay, next on the agenda is the Ramsey County Supplemental Law Enforcement Services Contract. And Jeremy Bolin. Did I get the name right?
Yes, sir.
Nice. And I'll just kind of set this up, and then maybe you can talk for just a minute, if you would, about any differences between the years. The main difference that I see, and I think we all, has everybody seen the updated version of the agreement?
I sent it digitally, and it's in that second packet I gave you as well. So the marked up copy, so you could see the difference between last year and this year.
Yep, perfect. And okay, thank you. And it seems to me that the major difference, there's some nickel dime kind of stuff, but the major difference is that one, the rate went up from 41 to 50 an hour, but also the hours went up per our request to do a little more work in Commercial Bay with some help on the enforcement of our permits. And I think those are the major differences. But if you want to just talk to us about whatever you'd like to talk to us about, that'd be great.
Sure.
You want to call a friend?
No, yes. So basically, I'm here to answer any questions you might have based on the contract and go over our statistics from the last snow year, which I've handed out to each and every one of you. So if anybody has any questions, we can go over this, or you can read it, either or, whatever you'd like. I personally have been a part of Water Patrol full-time since 2015. I came back during the pandemic, and I talked to you before about how the increase of watercraft was a lot busier on White Bear Lake than it has in previous years. Something that we have been able to allocate this year is we recently purchased a PWC last August. So we can actually get in now at Memorial Beach without worrying about hitting rocks or people in the water, where we can maneuver amongst the boats. And then also Commercial Bay, we can actually get down without backing up and having to worry about other boats and whatnot. So that's going to be a great asset to us this year. The water level, it's hard to say if it's coming up or what it's going to do this year. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
That sounds great. Alan, anything you would like to say?
I'll just highlight for the board, poor Todd wasn't the one that did this contract. It was one of the managers at Ramsey County, so I was working with her. The big change for you guys would be in paragraph 1, about 2/3 of the way through the first page, which really talks about the actual additional enforcement that you guys wanted. And then I think the hours are up to 280, and that's including the extra time. But as you can see, that there's a targeted patrol and a certain number of hours just for Commercial Bay. So those are the real highlights for you guys. And of course, everything costs more, so it did go up modestly. And so this is open. If you need more enforcement somewhere else, we can certainly supplement it. So, Todd, if you want to talk about who's going to be doing that patrol and when, that would be maybe helpful. And then you can, without any questions about the agreement, hit some highlights from your handout.
So currently our Water Patrol unit is established of a commander. We have 2 sergeants. We have 3 full-time deputies, 4 part-time deputies, 3 CSOs, and then we have about 30 reserve deputies right now. Amongst them, our part-time deputies primarily work the weekends, so they do our enforcement while the full-time staff are able to respond to calls, because we have 82 parks or 82 lakes in our county, and we also patrol our county parks. So we can't be everywhere at one time, and there's only usually 2 full-time deputies without having to work a contract or overtime on the weekends. And then the big focus is obviously the 4th of July fireworks on White Bear Lake, where we have all of our resources on White Bear Lake to try to prevent any dangerous events and to protect everybody that utilizes the lake in that event. Since we have narrow channels, we have a lot of people from whether they live on the lake or not, just the increase of flow on the lake itself, and especially the boat launches. So primarily our part-timers work Saturdays and Sundays, but they do work an alternative of Friday, and it's usually from 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. to 6, 7 p.m. And then our full-time staff, we kind of focus on that sunset hour between 7 and 8, 8:30, to educate PWC users, because they don't have navigation lights, they also need to be off the lake an hour before sunset. So educating them on that and the rules and restrictions, doing boating safety vessel checks, and making sure that whether they're a younger participant in watercraft, if they have their boater safety education, or if they're an adult that has experience but just ignore the rules, we're here to educate them and to remind them of what the rules, and that we also remind them that we're there. Washington County Sheriff's Office, although they have a boat over at the boat club, their primary focus isn't so much White Bear Lake when they have the St. Croix and all the other big lakes that they have, where we focus mostly on White Bear Lake. That's why we keep a boat on there in the boating season. I won't say year round, but during the boating season. So this year we have hired more, or have been reassigned more civilian staff that are uniformed personnel that can actually be out and also do that education piece for us, primarily focusing on commercial bay. With all the rentals coming out of Tally's, Your Boat Club, Admiral D's, and being able to educate people who aren't primary boat owners or boat users. In the last couple of years, we've had a couple incidents on the lake. We had a drowning off of a rental boat from Tally's. We had an airplane crash last year. We had a boating incident with a motorboat and a sailboat out in front of the boat club. The speed limit, that 35 miles an hour year-round on White Bear Lake, is a target. But mostly with the rentals, we also need to increase our presence and educate those people as well, because they may not have any experience. Fortunately, they're not bringing boats into the boat launch and then driving around the lake with their trailer still attached to their boat like we have in the past. But that pretty much summarizes it.
Okay, that's helpful. Any questions for Mr. Boland? Okay. Oh,
yes,
What are
ma'am.
the primary citations you're writing during the summer?
We have been dealing with the boat registration, expired boat registration. Too many people on watercraft without life jackets, or not enough life jackets on board for the amount of people they have. And then we go down the city ordinance of Memorial Beach with the noise ordinance, the noise violations and whatnot. In any given year, we try to focus the beginning of the boating season on educating people. Kind of ask, tell, make. I'm going to ask you to turn your music down. If I come back, now I'm going to tell you to turn your music down, and then afterwards we're going to make you turn your music down if that's putting you on paper and writing you a ticket, and that's what we'll do. But that's the discretion of each individual officer. Based on their attitude, how they treat us, if they're respectful, yeah, absolutely, I wasn't aware. And most of the time that deals with it. Noise travels, especially over water. So that 50-foot variance of, you can't hear an amplified noise more than 50 feet. If I'm sitting in my squad car at Memorial Beach on the bike trail and I can't hear the music on a boat that's 150 feet out from shore, I don't know how somebody in a house in an apartment behind me can hear that. But we'll deal with every complaint each individually. And if we have to walk out there, usually if you walk out on the dock or you just make yourself seen, everybody who hangs out at Memorial Beach or at those tie-up areas, the minute they see us come between the two peninsulas, it's instant quiet. And then the minute we go back around it gets turned up. So we radio to each other. So somebody's on land, somebody's coming by water, and now we have a jet ski. Who's expecting a cop on a jet ski? And then surprise. But it's not so much the enforcement side as far as it is education. But those are primarily our citations that we issue. We haven't had so much with speed just because of the amount of people on the lake. You just don't really have the room to get up and go. White Bear Lake isn't that place where people used to go tubing. The Delwood side is. A lot of people use the St. Germains Bay and the South Bay over there. They do, the pontoon swimming, the boat, the tubing and water skiing. They kind of do it over there. Once it's kind of sheltered by the tree line and the wind, and the waves aren't as bad over there. But it's also not as populated of people just anchoring and mooring around. It's like it is on the west side of the lake.
Any additional questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Now that you've talked about noise violations, so you guys are listening for noise about 50 feet away to determine if it's too loud? That's what you're using? Or?
So primarily we go by the city ordinance of the 50 feet for amplified noise. If I'm sitting on the bike path on Lake Drive in my squad car, and somebody is in the apartment building right behind me, and they're calling saying that the music's shaking the walls in my apartment, and my windows are down, and the closest boat is 150 feet out past the swimming buoys and everything, and I'm not hearing anything. But some people just don't like that boat being there because it's too close to their boat dock, or they feel, if you walk, you can get off your boat and walk it as close as you want and anchor it there. I mean, as long as it's not in the designated swim zone, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. And then people have to remember that the lake was there before the apartment building was. So the noise, it's like an airport. I can't go to an airport and control the sound of the jets and everything. With amplified noise, we can address it. We don't have the sound odometers or anything to tell me what the decibel of a speaker is. But we go by that amplified noise of 50 feet, as the city ordinance says. And usually it's a warning. And then as we go throughout the year, then we start, all right, I know you by name. We've dealt with you several times now. My partner's watching you, and as I come around the corner, you all of a sudden turn it down, and as soon as we go back, you're partying again. So,
Mike?
Are you on the water by yourself all the time?
No. Primarily we go out two-man groups.
Okay, this says $50 an hour, so that covers 2 men?
So it all depends. I can go out by myself. Our contracts are not. So what happens is a deputy gets partnered on, if they're working a contract like the Conservation District or contract cities, the Shoreview or countywide or the federal grant. What happens is a part-timer will be partnered with a reserve who's a volunteer, non-sworn, but uniformed volunteer. And they're trained in defensive tactics, in boating safety, first aid and CPR. So if I have to talk to somebody else can control our boat. So we're not ramming each other. We're not damaging other people's boats. They're not damaging our equipment. And then what happens, or if I have to write a ticket, we don't handwrite tickets anymore. It's all on a computer. So, and if we end up having to make an arrest on the lake, I still have somebody to help me control our suspect. Or if it's an emergency, we have a boat operator and we have a spotter, somebody who is watching the water and able to spot whatever it is we're looking for. And then if it comes into a rescue or a recovery mode, one person can operate a boat and try to pull somebody out of the water at the same time. So, and it's basically in an emergency situation on a contract, it's going to be a deputy and a reserve deputy. During that week, when I'm working with my full-time staff, you're going to see maybe 2 of us on the boat. But that's just because we're coming out and we're going to start, we're going to focus on jet skis tonight. Or we're getting a lot of complaints and we just have a call for service. We're going to go out. If we have to do a tow, like a boat breaks down on the lake and we have to tow somebody back, it's hard to operate a boat by yourself and then tie up another boat and then tow it back while maintaining a safe distance or from the boats from colliding to each other when you get to the boat launch or to the docks. So what we'll do is we'll always try to bring a partner with us. The same thing goes for the river. Nobody should ever be on the river by themselves. It's just too dangerous.
Would that be like double hours then?
No.
Counting the hours?
So no, it would not be. So if there's 2 deputies, so we say we have 2 part-timers working, one would be like on the countywide who could be Bald Eagle. and something happens on White Bear, you're only paying for the one that's out there, and the other one's getting paid by the other grant. So now there's a call for service. Those two are going to go out. They're going to accomplish whatever they're going to have to deal with. They'll come back to shore. The other one's going to go back to where he's supposed to be, and the other one goes back out on White Bear Lake and continues the rest of their shift. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the others are volunteers.
The reserve deputies are all volunteer.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions?
Ryan, I'll ask a couple that aren't being asked.
Yep, thanks,
Just
Alan.
because. And Deputy, you'll know one of them and you might not know the other. The one you will know is, and this is a question that always comes up, do you guys have jurisdiction over the whole lake since there's a county line that goes right through it?
Yes.
Please address what happens when a boat magically goes into that other county. And
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes. So White Bear Lake, Bald Eagle Lake, they're unique. White Bear Lake is shared by two different counties, two different entities with we'll say East County line or Century Avenue. If you draw a line straight across, it hits the peninsula. And the Delwood Matamidi side is Washington County, and then the White Bear Lake and White Bear Township side is Ramsey County. We have jurisdiction throughout the whole waterway. Same does Washington County. They can enforce things in Commercial Bay, Ramsey Beach, Memorial Beach, just like I can go over to the Delwood City Beach or anywhere in Matamidi. We're licensed police officers in the state of Minnesota. We have jurisdiction everywhere, but it's shared water. So both agencies have equal authority on the whole lake. Bald Eagle is a tri-county. The far northwest corner is Anoka County, the far northeast corner is Washington County, and then County Road J and everything south is Ramsey County. The boat launch is in Ramsey County, so we get primary responsibilities on the lake. Now, if it's something that, Ramsey County has a ordinance that prohibits discharging a dangerous weapon within the county because of the amount of population, the municipality and population. So therefore, it's against the ordinance. The DNR does not enforce and cannot enforce city ordinances. They can only enforce state and federal law. So now the sheriff's office would end up coming out like bow hunting on White Bear, on Bald Eagle. We end up having to enforce that. Otter Lake, same thing, County Road J. If you go straight across, the north side's Anoka, the south side's Ramsey. You get duck hunters, you get bow fishermen that go out, and they're now discharging a dangerous weapon. You can go on the north side of Otter Lake as long as you're not within, I believe it's 500 or what?
Quarter mile of a structure.
So a quarter mile of a structure, which puts you in that really small lily pad patch in the middle of the lake. That's the only place legally that you can discharge and duck hunt on Otter Lake.
But it's good cover.
Good point.
I guess. And it overgrows. It depends on the water level, right? White Bear Lake is the same thing. So we have the ordinance that you can't bow hunt in Ramsey County, and then you have the park ordinances, the Ramsey County park ordinances that extend 300 feet into the water around a county property. So you have the little creek on the south side of Ramsey Beach that you'll get people over there bow fishing because the pond on the back side of the parking lot is full of carp. So they just want to kill the carp because they're eating all the other fish in the lake. But it's illegal. I get what you want to do, but it's illegal. You can't do it. So we try to educate them. We print it out in our cars and we hand them the ordinances and say, here it is. Okay, and usually we don't see them again. But there are also those really annoying boats late at night that are coming up to your shoreline around your dock with 600-watt spotlights that are shining now into your living room as you're trying to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway or whatever you want to watch. So we get those complaints specifically because the citizens that live on the lakes, the residents, know that someone's, they're bow fishing, but that light's annoying. Okay, we'll deal with it. So we come out. Typically, it's just basically like a knock and talk. We call them over to shore. If we don't have to launch, we get them over. We explain it. We're happy to leave, and then they go, and we never see them again. But once they cross that border and they go over to the Delwood Matamidi side, I'm not aware of the Delwood Matamidi ordinances and what they can and cannot do. I know you can duck hunt in Washington County. I know you can't in Ramsey, so I can only enforce it on our side. St. Germain Bay, there's that stretch up on the northeast corner that there are no structures. We don't get complaints typically over there for bow fishing. It's bald eagle and otter and turtle and other lakes that we have in our county that we end up dealing with that. But we do get them, and usually it's just the people in the parking lot at Ramsey Beach that are just going to the pond to try to take them out. So, does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Second question is, DNR, I know, is short-staffed, and we had a pretty good relationship with Ryan, who was our last official conservation officer assigned to White Bear Lake.
You have a new one.
Do you know if we've gotten a new one, and if so, who is that?
We do have a new one, and I can tell you his name. 1 second.
If he's in your phone, that is good. If you would text him and ask him to come and introduce himself to the board next month, that would be great.
His name is Matthew Pavla.
Okay.
And he is assigned to the White Bear Station.
Perfect.
Can you mention his last name again, please?
Pavla, P-A-A-V-O-L-A. And I believe he is brand new, like Ryan was.
Well, they'd love to. Well, Ryan wasn't new. He was new to the area, but he'd been doing it a while. So I think
Yeah,
these guys,
he was new to the DNR.
Yeah.
He worked for Mille Lacs County, but
right. So these guys would love to meet him, and they'd love to hear what the DNR does on the lake too. So it's been a few years since Ryan left. So
absolutely. I can get you his contact information
Yeah,
as
great.
well, and then
we'll set it up.
Okay.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, thanks a lot for coming out and talking to us, and thanks for all you do for us on the lake.
Thank you.
So I'd like to make a request here, if it's okay with everybody. We have 2 items left under new business. One of them is Commercial Bay, where we're going to discuss the surveys, and the other is a donation proposal. And
Were we going to approve the contract, or?
okay, good. Let me finish this thought, and then we'll get to that. And is it okay with everybody if we move the donation proposal up to the next item so that we can get that taken care of? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the current contract with Ramsey County. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Question on the page 3 or 4, it says that the amount will not exceed $14,000. I see that in our worksheet here that the expected amount is $10,000 for 2023. How do we typically handle variances in cost?
I think in this case, we would have to take the balance out of the reserve,
Yes.
the excess out of the reserve.
Okay. And that's approved by passing this motion, I guess.
Okay, so good question. I'll amend the motion to pay whatever is in excess of the budgeted amount out of the reserves. And is that okay with you, Meredith? Did you second that?
I did.
Is that amendment
Yeah,
okay?
Great.
Okay. Does that satisfy that? Any additional questions? Or I'm sorry, discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to say, obviously, some of the new part of the contract is counting of slips and measuring of dock lengths. And I don't know if we have this ready, but what's our expectation as a board for that? You know, is it weekly reports, monthly reports, no reports? Just curious what everyone thinks on that front, or if they have any expectations for the sheriff.
Yeah, I think that from my perspective anyway, just to get it out, I think that once the board confirms the proper dock lengths are installed, then I think it's a matter of the sheriff's department just confirming that additional docks aren't added on, or no major changes have been made to the structures, that kind of thing. That's how I would see it. But what do people think about that? Any thoughts?
And I can tell you that the operator would be contacted, so that's why it's only a portion of the boating season. Because by the time you get to July, everyone's pretty much got what they've got. And so if folks are out there enforcing the length and then counting slips, not boats, because of course you never know who's not going to be in their slip at any given moment, that's really all we can ask them to do. I'm more than happy to ask them to come in at least once. They're obviously patrolling more often than that, but if they come to the board meeting with either a report or with a deputy to tell us what their findings are, I'm sure they'd be willing to do that too.
Okay. Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that passes. Okay, now if we could handle the donation proposal item, that would be great. And do you want to set this up?
Sure. So Manitou Clothing Company is a new company that right now is online. One of the co-owners is Dave Autry. Dave Autry sent us a proposal. It's in your packet regarding giving some of the proceeds from his clothing line when purchased to the White Bear Lake Conservation District for the conservation of White Bear Lake. And so he's here if you have any questions or would like to know more.
And a nice letter was included, a nice descriptive letter was included in the packet.
Yep.
Maybe we can just have some discussion about this, if that's all right. I mean, first off, I think it's very generous, of someone to come forward and offer to make a donation to the board. I guess my concern always with the board taking money like that is if there are any strings attached or expectations associated with how the money is utilized, that kind of thing. And Dave, would you mind just coming up and chatting about that item?
Yeah, so I really don't have any expectations whatsoever. I mean, I trust it would go to the right place. The main goal behind it would be, just to try to benefit the lake, right? That's kind of how I would like to market it. As far as strings attached, that's all I would ask, is that I would be allowed to, include that on the website. I figured if not here, I'd find another organization that would, be able to put the money towards just something benefiting the lake, whether it's, I guess I'm not even really sure anything, that's where I kind of would just trust you guys to put it to good use. And it's really about conserving and protecting the lake for future generations, and it says that right on your website. So that's kind of what I was basing it off of. So.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And does anybody have any questions for Dave or Mike?
Would you be using the White Bear Lake Conservation District's name and logo in any of your advertising?
If you approved it, if not, I would not, and I'd be comfortable either way.
Any additional questions? Okay.
So you sell a variety of mostly clothing items?
Yeah. So I'm just kind of getting started. It's kind of a side gig. I have a full-time job as well.
Okay.
But this is one of the sweatshirts that I made and designed. You can kind of check it out. But the website is live now. I just started and I just launched it on March 31st, and I did 4,000 in sales in a couple weeks, and so there's a little bit of emotion behind it, and I just figure why not give a little bit to a place that I care a lot about. And I was born and raised here, and care a lot about this place. So, yeah, that's the motive.
Any additional questions? Meredith?
Do you have like a set amount that you're going to donate, or?
Sorry, what was that?
Is there a set amount you're proposing, or a percentage? Or?
I'm looking at 5% of all my sales. That's my goal, and that's kind of what I budgeted for, and I believe I can do that. So, yeah, 5% is kind of what I would look at committing to you guys. So,
just so we know, would that be given to us monthly or yearly, or
yeah, and that's another
plan on that?
Piece that I'd be willing to kind of talk about and negotiate however you guys would see fit. I'm comfortable doing it kind of however you guys would want to do it. So I guess if me and Cheryl could figure that out, or whoever, I'm happy to just kind of work that out and figure it out with you, however it would look. So yeah.
Any additional questions? Alan?
I don't have a question, but I will recommend that you do as few of these as you can a year.
Sure.
Because by law, we have to accept them by resolution. And so you don't want to have to put a resolution every month for $5.
Sure.
Right? So maybe a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Just because there will be some administrative work to actually receive that.
That sounds good.
And whether or not you want it targeted towards milfoil or something else, or if
Yeah.
you just want it in the general fund.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And so, Alan, if the idea is that when a check becomes available, the board would accept that check.
I would draft a resolution accepting that as a donation to the government. It works as a receipt for him because it's obviously a tax deduction, essentially, and it also would direct where that money would be spent if there's any direction to it.
And is there any action that the board needs to take right now?
None.
Okay.
If he walked in here with a check and said, would you take it, then it would be incumbent upon us to have a resolution accepting it.
Okay. All right, so any additional questions? Okay, so thank you.
All right, thanks,
Do
guys.
we understand how, I mean, internally, how we account for this? It comes into what is an income in the general fund?
We can accept additional funding. The accounting part
Yeah.
isn't hard.
Okay.
So I think we'll move on. All right. Okay, so the Commercial Bay, the ADUA survey discussion and invoice approval. Let's have the discussion, and then will you make sure we don't forget the approval? Okay, thanks. So I think everybody has seen the draft survey results. And as you recall, we asked for two options to be, not really options, just two ways to look at it would be presented to the board by the surveyor, and they've done that. Basically, one way is to extend the property lines that exist on the shore, just continue those lines out into the water. The other way is to, and these, everything would be from the ordinary high water. And then the other way is to try to come up with an imaginary center of the lake point and try to skew all the ADUA lines towards that point. And so we have both of those survey results in our packet. I guess I'll just start. You know, I guess I'd just like to have a discussion about this for a moment until we kind of figure out what we want to do. But it looks, based on my review of the results, it looks like the option of continuing the property lines out into the water seems like it fits everything better, and almost seems like it's more in line with how we typically see things as a board. The one area where that doesn't work well is the boundary between the city's Lions Park property and the Docks of White Bear property. And in that case, the property line on shore is at such an angle or orientation that ADUA line extended would end up cutting out quite a lot, it seems, of the Docks of White Bear. No, thanks. But if we have questions, we'll let you know.
Just wait. You listen to him first.
And so that area seems to be difficult. But what does everybody think? We've all seen it. Any thoughts?
My first reaction on it, I do like.
Hey, thanks.
First reaction is the property lines for the majority work fine. And everything that I read in the ADUA definition, property line's not even a definition in it, right? So it's on those ones that are in question. I do think the two owners on each side, or the city of White Bear and Bryan, should sit down and figure out what is the best angle for that. And then if we have suggestions there where if you look at the one that goes into the center of the lake there, maybe that's what's used at that end. But I would ask first is, do we want the two parties that are in question there to try to figure out what is that best thing for both, where they can agree on it, or then we can give some suggestions.
have a,
Susie?
I think you want to have a set rule for the whole lake and not have special situations, because then you're going to have people coming back and saying, it worked for that guy, why can't it work for me?
Yeah, you can't have one set thing because you get in these corners of these lakes,
Yeah.
right? And if they pinch, that's where the people on both sides kind of have to agree on what is that boundary, right? That applies here between Lions Park and the docks of White Bear for sure.
Additional comments, input?
I would love to have a set rule for the lake, but it's impractical to do so.
I don't think so.
So we got to basically have multiple sets of rules based on the curvature of the.
Up to having people saying, I want to do his precedent, or that's a precedent, I want to follow that one.
Yep.
That's not probably in their favor.
How would you respond to?
Oh, I know. I've looked at it. Yeah.
But I mean, that's usually how we've handled even the other disputes on the lake. It's like we've gotten the owners together and they've usually hashed it out. Right? And then if they can't, we give the suggestion, and that's the route that usually works. But I would that would be my 2 cents. It's like get the two parties involved, especially on that question where it's like, is it that point of the starting on the shoreline that's there, and then where does that extend, right? What is that fair for both parties? And if they can't work it out, then we got to help.
Okay.
What do you mean?
There's a line for the city, but there's not a line for us. I mean, that's,
Here's the property line.
you mark the southernmost point of the park,
So.
and then we don't have any boundary going out from that.
Yeah, and that's what we're saying is like the two parties should agree on what is that, what should.
But there's not a line for us.
Well, there isn't a defined line for that south side, right? There's a point of where you end your property on the shoreline, right? But if the ADUA is not defined by a property line, right? That's what it says. So like on the majority of the docks, it works really well. I think you just have to figure out on that one that's not right, because we're not going to use property lines there because it will cut you off at 10 feet, right? That's not. That's.
Why would we have a line that goes straight out from our side?
You could. I think you got to agree on both sides on that. Where does that thing from that point? Where does it extend, and what is that degree that you go out?
Clarity, because of this problem, I sent it over to the shopping center and also to the DNR to ask for their feedback.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I don't. So I think that that line between those two properties, the Lions Park and the docks of White Bear, that's the common line there. And I think it's to your point, Chris. We just have to come to some agreement as to where that line should be. And maybe it should be this way, or maybe it should be that way. But I think Chris makes a good point that it would be good to get those two parties, the city and docks of White Bear, together to see if they can come up with some kind of amicable agreement of how that line should be looked at. And then the board can consider that, and if it makes sense to us, we can adopt that approach. Alan?
And I don't know if this will help or not, but we didn't do this project to start a fight with anybody. So I think we really need to zoom out and say this was for information for us, because we asked these operators to get surveys. I think only one has, and so we just said we're going to do it ourselves. And so everyone probably knew without thinking it that this would be a problem, just like it is any other place where there's two owners in a little bay like this. And so there's such a thing as custom and usage, and this has been permitted the way it's worked for quite a while. So it would be hard just because now we've got lines on a survey to say now everyone has to do it differently. So I would hope that these guys would accept that this is just what works in that corner. But if it doesn't, then yeah, inevitably they'll be back here asking for you guys to figure it out.
Yeah, well, and I know the city has registered some concern with the way those docks lay out and the access that is limited then to the Lions Park. And so I think it would be good for the two parties to get together and kind of see what they can figure out.
And I think that was just in winter, right, when they need to get them over into the storage area of the park?
I don't know that it's just limited to that.
We can let them figure it out.
Right.
But yeah.
That's right.
I think the comment that was brought up in like 3 or 4 meetings ago, and I forget her name from the city, she said she didn't want boats backing up into the ADUA. Okay, if we agree on that and we all figure out what is that safe space or whatever it's going to be, I think that's part of it to make. We've got to figure that out.
Yeah, we don't want people parking on our lot.
Totally get it, right?
Okay.
Any other discussion?
I don't do the parking lots.
Any other discussion on the survey? Okay, well, I think there's a couple of orders of business that we need to do. One is we need to officially accept the survey.
Receive them, yep.
Receive them. So I'll make a motion to receive the survey results.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive the survey results. Any discussion?
How have we received it, both in paper and in a computer file?
We have PDFs and a CAD file.
Okay, and we don't have the software to actually look at it with the CAD file, right?
We don't there's free software that you can look at it, but I think if we wanted the document manipulated, we would ask somebody to do that.
Yeah, as long as we have a, safe place to back that up, or, to keep it.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we don't need to do. I suppose if any of the operators wanted to see it, we'd give them a copy.
I think that's fine for the board to share the CAD file of the survey results with the marina owners. I think that's fine. I mean, personally, I would imagine that most of them have their own surveys, especially when you look at how the survey resulted and how the docks align so well everywhere other than this corner to the property line extended.
Okay.
Mike?
Have we decided how the ordinary high water mark is going to be marked?
No, but it's a good question, and we need to make that determination. And when do we need to make that determination? Like soon, I guess, right?
That the ice is out. I mean, they can get down there, so he would like to know what the board would like.
So some options, one, they could paint a mark on the rock. That doesn't seem ideal because that won't hold up over time, it seems. Typically for these kinds of things, they might pound rebar stakes to identify these points. I don't know, Sherry, you had mentioned something about maybe
The poles?
Yeah.
Like what you see in mountains when you drive, when the snow gets really high and you need to see the road, they have those really tall poles that are in there so that they'll be there throughout the year.
So they're visible during the winter, which
Right.
maybe that's not so critical to us. Mike?
Did they suggest that we back it up from?
Okay.
Because
yes,
a lot of it,
a
if
5 foot.
if they're marking in rocks or drilling in rocks and that, we know what the ice can do. It can rearrange those rocks. Another suggestion they said would be to come back 5 feet from that and then put their marker there. And I don't know that we
Into
need
the soil.
a
Yeah.
6-foot pole in the wintertime, but we certainly need a marker in the summertime.
Yeah, so one option is instead of them marking the actual line, they mark a 5-foot offset. So that if anybody ever wants to find that point again, you find the 5-foot offset, take the 5 feet, and you're at the ordinary high water level.
Is this something that the surveyor's going to come back and do?
True.
So this is a provision on accepting it, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we asked them to do it, so.
That's right, and they're planning to do it, but they would like some guidance from us. And sorry to do this, Paul, but do you have any input on that? Just that marking of the ordinary high water, if you don't mind.
From a city standpoint, I mean, whatever works. I think as you look at that shoreline, I think you got to be careful of, an offset to make sure that doesn't put a stake in the middle of the trail, or there's obviously.
Oh, and Paul, would you mind? And really, what I'm asking is for your civil engineering input.
Yeah, Paul Kelpie, City of White Bear Lake engineer. Just from the city standpoint, just to be careful of, I think we're supportive of marking them so that everybody's on the same page. Just to be careful of what that offset might be and where it lands, because there's a lot of other amenities along the shoreline, whether it be, it depends how steep the shoreline is at each of the locations. It may fall on the, in the case of by Docks White Bear, that may actually push it out where there might be a stake in the trail, or out in the public right away. We would be cautious of that. Also, anything that's kind of, the 20-foot poles, or however tall you'd put them would be kind of, visually not appealing along that lakefront there.
How do you think it would work to just drive rebar at the ordinary high water level line?
So just anecdotally, we did our own survey. As kind of lines up with the survey that the district did. In those locations, at the ordinary high, with the riprap, I think it could be somewhat difficult. So we ourselves were trying to figure out, you almost got to find a spot between the rocks that works to, even determining the exact OHW is difficult with the riprap and the unevenness. So there's going to be some general variation there to begin with, but an offset might be the right solution as long as it doesn't impede other things.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that, Paul. Okay. So
they're surveyors. What would they normally do?
Right. Well, then what?
Or versed than us. So.
Right. Agreed. And I guess we can go back to them and ask that question of, so to the board, let me ask this question. Does anybody care if they install the permanent markers at the ordinary high water level, or if they use an offset? Is anybody opposed to one of those or the other? Again, assuming that we're not, bunching a hole.
I would be opposed to something permanent if it's unsightly, if it's in the middle.
As long as it's not a 40-foot pole and it's like.
I mean, no one wants to visually see that.
And I think that what would typically go in would be something that would be down at ground level, and then they might put an orange cap or, I don't know, some kind of a marker cap on the top. But it's not something that's going to stick up, and really it shouldn't be something that people trip over as they're walking. In order to find it, you'll go out there and you may have to use a metal detector, a locator of some sort.
Yeah, as long as it's inconspicuous, I think that's fine. But yeah, they may not be able to pound a stake in the riprap, and they may have to put the mark at 305, right? We just need to know it's at 305. And
right. And what they'll do is they'll probably drive it down to some elevation so that you can put a rod on it, I would imagine. Yeah, agreed. I mean, we don't want something unsightly. And I think that idea of, are they able in every situation to put it at the ordinary high water level? I think we just have to leave it to them to kind of fight through that.
Right.
Yeah, right on.
We just have to have a memory, so that, say 15 years from now.
Right.
Like, what's this marker here for? What is it? It's not right on,
Yeah, I think that's one benefit of having them put it right at the ordinary high water level is you don't have to remember the offset.
Right. Oh, yeah, of course. Do you know how many? Is it every property line, or is it every X amount of feet, yards?
We asked them to put them in at each corner of each property.
All right.
And then one in between, maybe. I can't recall the text exactly.
I've got marks consistent with what you said.
Okay.
Corners and middle.
Of each lot, or of each thing. Okay, so the path forward then is that Sherry will contact the surveyor, let them know we don't want the big rods and we don't want the paint, and get their input on whether they would suggest putting the markers in at the actual ordinary high water level, or if they would suggest using an offset. And then once we get that information back, what do we want to do? Do we want to just authorize them to do it the way they think best? Is that okay with everybody?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
What if it's a combination?
I don't think they'll do that, but I don't know. I don't think that's ideal. So hopefully they'll come back with one or the other. Okay.
And we keep track of it, and the city can keep track of it.
Right.
What these markers are.
Right, and they can also actually update the CAD file to put in the actual location, so that that's accurate as well. Okay, any additional discussion on those surveys?
Will they be responsible for marking the ADUA in the water?
Oh, good question. Thanks for that.
The corners.
Yeah, so one idea is, I'll just throw this out as a suggestion. We could ask the surveyors to come back, get in a boat with somebody, and go out and using their fancy equipment to assist, or so we could drop a buoy in, something like that at the outside or at the water edge of the ADUA. That would be one idea. They're coming back anyway, to mark the ordinary high water level. Maybe there would be some additional funds required or costs required for that, but at least we would know that this first season they would be going in the correct location. That's one idea.
I mean, buoys just an obstacle.
Well, so maybe it's not buoys. What do we suggest?
Buoys at least would be something that a boat could hit and not have any problem with. If you put a post in there and when a boat hits it, there could be some damage to the boat, but the buoy would move away. But that also presents the fact that if you're putting it here and you have a line long enough so it was able to move, that it's not always going to be at the corner. It's going to be able to float 5 to 10 feet either direction of that corner.
Yeah, and maybe I could just offer up another option is once all the docks are in, to bring the surveyors out and have them confirm for us that all the docks are within the 300-foot ADUA from the ordinary high water level.
Here's one thing too you could look at. On the one that does the center of the lake, they actually gave GPS coordinates for where the 300-foot mark is for that. Could they do that with the property line too, and just give us coordinates for that?
I think they have.
I didn't see it on the one, but maybe you have a new one that has it.
No.
You should have a second draft.
Yeah, maybe it is. I may just have a different one. I didn't see it on the one with the property lines, but if you have the coordinates, then you can just hop right on top of that too. So
yeah, and I think what they've done is they've given us coordinates at the ordinary high water level.
They didn't on land.
They didn't on land?
There are not coordinates on the land side.
I think they did for the point on land and then the point out to the 300 foot.
Right.
At least for the one where they were doing the center of the lake. Now, we don't want any of those, but besides maybe on some of the other ones, but
I think and just, using I guess the city because it's convenient. We have the coordinates at the ordinary high water level, and then we have the coordinate that line extended out to the 300-foot ADUA, or am I just not seeing that correctly?
Yeah.
And Sherry, could you put one of these up on the thing there? Just so that we get to the bottom of this. Yeah, well, how about the other one? Because this one, I think
Chris
said that that one had it, but the other one.
Type is so tiny.
okay.
See, so when
I must be looking at an old one.
And so that coordinate, you see that coordinate there just off of Whitaker Street as an example.
Well, there we go, Darren's showing us.
So that's out but come to shore and yeah, but come
two spots.
But come to shore and you can see the coordinates there on shore. Yeah. So those are the corners at the ordinary high water level.
We got the property lines here. We have property lines plus the extras out in the lake. Middle.
It's the ordinary high water on one and then the 300-foot on the other. Yep. Okay, so I'm lost. Where were we at?
They put the coordinates of where they drive the stakes in?
No, I was talking about the endpoint of the tree.
Endpoint.
Because they'll have the coordinates on shore and they'll put a pin. I was just saying 300 feet out, so you had it where then you can just put your buoy or do whatever you want, and at least you can measure to it.
Yeah. So let me ask the question. Does the board feel like buoys are necessary if we have somebody confirm, once the docks are in, if we have somebody confirm that they're within the 300, are we okay?
I don't know if you do right now. I think if we get everything organized, we get the docks right, we get everybody to figure out where they need to go, and we agree on that, And if there's disputes, fine, we have the point we can go to, right? And we can go double check some of it, right? The links and some of those other things. But if there's agreement on it and it's all right, I think it's fine.
Yeah, and I would differ just a little. I think this first year, I think it would be good just to confirm so that we all are comfortable with that. And after this, and let's say the surveyor comes back, confirms, yes, everything's good. And in subsequent years, then we'll have that that we can refer back to and say, well, they put in their docks the same as they did last year. Last year they were within the 300, so they must be within the 300. Something like that. Alan?
And it would not be hard to take one of these, whatever's approved, and just make it as a clear Mylar, and then just take the drone up, take a picture from that distance or that perspective, and just overlay the Mylar on the photo, and that'll confirm everything pretty easily without buoys or any markers.
Well, and hopefully if we get things confirmed out of the chute this year and all the docks are conforming, then hopefully all of this kind of goes away, all this verification.
And docks are easy. You take a wheel, you walk the dock.
Yeah, but we have to get it from the ordinary.
My house that.
You got a wavy one?
Excuse me, these GPS points, that's exactly how the milfoil's treated. The group of GPS points, they go out, find them, treat it. So
other duties as assigned.
Okay.
Measure the docks.
There you go.
Okay. Hey, did we vote on the motion to receive the, I think we did vote on that.
Didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Have to go back.
I think we're in the discussion of that.
I think we're in the discussion of that, actually.
I think you're in discussion. I don't remember.
Okay, so any further discussion, and then I'm going to call.
That's right.
Then I'll call a vote.
I think we're just taking the survey data. We're not picking one. We
No,
just
true,
have the
true.
data.
Yeah, true, good
right?
point.
We're going to figure out all the other stuff, and
Yeah, that's
we have the surveys.
That's right, and that's all we're voting on is that, hey, the surveys, we accept them. You know, we're not going to go back to the surveyor and say, oh, this is completely wrong, completely redo it, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
I think if we saw some elephants, then we wouldn't do it, but I don't see it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's me. Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of the motion, vote aye, or say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes. And I'll just say, you know, I would suggest, and we could help, you know, we would like to be involved in this if we could get some members of the Conservation District Board, some people from the city, some people from Docks of White Bear Lake, and if we could set something up for, you know, Thursday, Friday this week and get in a room and just see if we can reach some consensus on that. Because if we can't, then, you know, that changes, I think, I think the board, at least I'm super hopeful that you two can reach some consensus, and so that the board only has to step in case you don't. So can we try to set something like that up? Paul, is the city open to something like that?
Yeah, the city would be available.
And Mr. McGoldrick, would Docks of White Bear be open to something like that?
No.
So you're not interested?
I'm flying out tomorrow morning, so I won't be here for 2 weeks.
Do you have a representative that you could send?
Can you do it virtually? Teams meetings?
Okay. Yeah, so then we could try to set something up for maybe Thursday, Friday morning. And we'll figure out amongst the board who will attend.
Brian, does that mean that they are unable to put their docks in at this time?
You know, well, I think that what happens is this, is that a person can choose to do what they do, and they could put in their docks, but then if we reach some agreement, then it might force them to reorient those docks. And so I think the sooner that we can come to some consensus on this, the better it is for the operators in Commercial Bay. Okay, so I think, I'll make a motion to approve the invoice for the surveying.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the invoice. Any discussion on that?
Ask Brian if he wants to. It's not on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the survey invoice?
No, it's
Okay,
fine.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thanks for that. So I think we're done with that discussion. Oh, sorry. One additional item, the dock installation 2-week notification. So the board needs to provide some guidance, I think, to the LUC as to what the expectations are for this review of the installation. We've been notified by several of the marina owners that that installation is happening or it's imminent. I would like some input from the board, or I think the LUC needs some input from the board as to what our expectations are. And I'll say, just to start the discussion, I think what we're after is somebody from the LUC going out and just confirming the number of slips, because we know how many slips are allowed, confirming the dock orientation. We have their drawing with the docks on it. Do they have the right number of docks, the right correct number of fingers, just this kind of stuff, so that we can check those boxes before it's July and the thing is just etched in stone, it seems. So that's what my expectation is. What do the other board members think about this confirmation that we're asking the LUC to take care of for us?
I think the data points you brought up were very fair, right? And I think that gives us a better guidance, especially for the LUC, because we're already going out there tomorrow, and it's like stuff's not going to be even set up. So it's like, do we even need to do these beginning checks? Probably not. Where it's like we can talk through it and say, hey, here's the criteria. If it's number of slips, orientation, number of docks, just bare minimum, close enough to the high water mark, whatever it is, like check that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's also, we have their dock lengths. It's maybe not from ordinary high water, but that's okay too,
Sure.
And so take a wheel, confirm that.
Yeah.
Any additional things we should ask the LUC to handle while they're out there checking on that?
Brian, I just want to ask, because we still haven't received a diagram updated for docks of White Bear to have 300-foot docks. So how would that be handled?
I don't know. We've asked for that, and if the marina owner refuses to supply us with that, I don't know what we can do. Alan, what would we do if we've asked for that and it hasn't shown up over 5-6 months or whatever it's been?
Are we moving up the item because it is on the agenda?
Yeah, fair enough. So we'll hold that.
And since the operator's here, I think you could ask them, because it's a status update, and I don't think Sherry has gotten anything, right?
No, I'm sorry. That is under the LUC. We have.
Yeah, so we'll deal with that then, under the LUC.
I just don't want to mingle subjects.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I think is that good enough guidance for the LUC?
That's good. And
okay.
Darren, you, me, and
I was just say it was all a noble idea back in January. Give us a 2-week notice.
Yeah.
Right. Well, ice out. They got businesses they're going to run.
Yeah.
I get it. So we got 6-hour notice, whatever. I think we're fine.
Like, figure it out.
Yep.
It's a good thought back in January.
So I think we're done with that item, and I'd like to move on to unfinished business. Everybody okay with that? Okay, unfinished
Go ahead. Sorry.
Unfinished business, 2024 application form, watercraft storage fees. And I would like to suggest that we move that to the May meeting.
Yep.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so.
Second.
Okay, so we don't need a motion to do that.
Okay.
We'll just handle it that way.
Carry it over.
Yep. Okay. Executive committee. Thank you for this. So on to reports. Executive committee report, and the executive committee met April 4th. We discussed the survey results, the donation from the clothing company, and we discussed a little bit about how we're going to confirm compliance in Commercial Bay. And then we had some treasure items. Any questions on any of that? We've discussed the survey and the clothing company donation. Any questions on the executive committee report? Okay, then moving on to the Lake Quality Committee. Mike?
Lake Quality, in your package, you have a quote from Blue Water Science, Stephen Colmus. And we do the milfoil survey. You're all pretty much familiar with that. And, of course, when we throw the rake down, and everything that comes up, but we also check for any other invasives. We also do a special assessment for starry stonewort, and that's done in several places, the launching facilities where it generally starts. There's a recap. He does a report, which I think was in your board information this month. It's good reading if you like that stuff. And he comes to the meeting and explains everything and answers all sorts of good questions. The bid is for $3,750. It's $150 more than last year, and I think with all the increases we've seen, that's pretty reasonable. So I would like to make a motion that we accept the services of Steve McComas, Blue Water Science, to do the Eurasian Water Milfoil Survey and other surveys included in his bid for $3,750.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just start. How does this compare to what we budgeted, Mike? Do you know?
$150 over the budget.
Oh, over our budget. Okay, got it. Okay, any additional discussion on this? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes.
I have a couple other little things.
Okay, Mike.
Lake elevation today is 922.77. 922.77. Water temperature is 42 degrees. So get your swimsuits on.
922.77 compares to last year.
Yes, it's a foot lower. Still in a good range, though, because it was high last spring. Started out really high last spring. And the other big thing today is this is Ice Out Day. It's official Ice Out Day.
Calling it?
So called it this morning with the help of Chris and Meredith, who both had ice that they could see very well from their houses. I think I was able to call it pretty accurately. So today is Ice Out.
Compared to last year.
Well, last year was way early. It was like
way early?
March. I think we're.
What was ice out last year?
It was April 20th last year.
Okay.
April 20th?
Oh, we had, the lake froze over December 6th. I'd mentioned that before. We had 23 inches of ice. That's not a terrible amount of ice. It's not. But we had 23 inches of ice.
What was ice off last year? It was 20th?
20th.
What was the year before? The year before was earlier.
It was really late.
Really early.
I don't have it with me.
I don't know. We're all getting old.
There's one where it was in May.
Curtis is going to look it up.
I don't remember how long ago.
But I thought, the ice was insulated because we had that heavy snow after it froze. And, usually ice makes, you have your surface and then it makes ice as it gets colder. What happened this year was that there was so much snow and slush there that started freezing. And it started making ice this way and then everything sunk down. So it's kind of weird, kind of backwards way to do it. But
2021 was March 29th.
That's what it was, 21.
Okay, I'll just say I really appreciate you handling that ice in and ice out, because I think that data is going to be real critical over time. I think our ice in period is just going to get shorter and shorter, but we'll see.
There's a lot of gambling going on with that date.
Yeah.
I did too. I did the 27th.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. On to the next item, which is the Lake Utilization Committee, and sitting in for Mark tonight is Chris.
Okay, the first one we had Blackberry Yacht Racing Association. The LUC approved, so I'd like to make a motion to the board to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
Okay, the next one, Wildwood Beach Manor condominiums. They changed the configuration of their dock where it doesn't cover basically the whole frontage of it. They basically put the dock right down the middle and then angled everything at 45 degrees, where it opens it up in that space. And they've had that configuration in the past, years ago. I think it was about 9 years ago. And we just feel it fits a lot better, especially for Wildwood Beach. And then there's another association to the side of them that opens it up quite a bit for them, where they're not right on top of each other. So the LUC approved, and I would ask the board to make a motion for the board to approve that.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion?
That was the same number of boats, correct?
Same amount of boats, yep. No additional, just the configuration.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
East Shore, we made a decision to table that while they, some of the association presidents get some of the neighbors' comments and get on the same page on that. So we shelved that. We'll move on to Forest Heights Improvement Association. This is a no change from their dock of last year, so LUC approved, and we're asked the board make a motion for the board to approve that.
Second.
And a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
I think we'll skip over docks for right now until Brian comes back. Oh, Driscoll docks. That's right. We had the additional Driscoll docks. Fletcher Driscoll came in. They got their permit in today. They've been having some hardships there with the loss. But they're basically, I think it was 4 slips less. So there'll be 4 or 5 less A-boats there. But 4, was it 4? And so the configuration basically the same, but less boats. We approved that. We also brought up we'd like to not charge the late fee towards them, and the LEC approved that. So we'll make a motion to approve both of those. So the approval of their permit and not charging them the late fee on their permit.
That's the motion.
Yeah.
Second.
Second.
Second for those items. Any discussion? And I'll start just by mentioning that our standard policy in these situations is that we notify the dock owners on either side. Maybe 2 weeks is what we try to do. And in this situation, that didn't occur, but the 2 neighboring homeowners sent emails to Sherry letting her know that they were okay with that. And did I get all that right?
Yeah.
All right. So that's just one thing here. Okay. So any further discussion on this one? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so that passes.
Should we do VFW, dock expansion, before we get in docks of White Bear?
Your call.
We'll just do the VFW dock expansion. So the VFW has come in and asked for additional 16 boats and to basically make their dock 300 feet. They're short of 300 feet right now, so if they go to 300, they have 16 more slips they could put there. They're currently, and I may need some help with this, they're in limbo with...
The DNR is asking us for input on this plan.
Yeah.
Eventually, the VFW will come back with the amended permit.
Yeah, and I can just clarify real quick. I think what the DNR is asking us as the local governmental unit is whether we would like an EAW, an environmental assessment worksheet, to be prepared for the project. And I'll just jump into this quickly. The rule or the statute rule says that if an expansion is greater than 20,000 square feet or causes a total of more than 20,000 square feet, that would trigger an EAW, or if a new dock came in that was over 20,000 square feet, that would trigger an EAW. And the way I read that statute is that the 20,000 square feet is a measure of the docks and that kind of thing, but also the area required to navigate out of the ADUA. is included in that 20,000 square feet. And so if we look at the entire width of the proposal, it's 110 feet wide and it'd be 300 feet long. So that would make that area about 33,000 square feet, which would be above, obviously, the 20,000 square feet. So it seems to me, based on that language, that an EAW would be appropriate in this situation. Now, one option would be to just table this item tonight and to request some clarification from the DNR. That would be one option. But and Alan?
Before we go to the options, I guess the other side of that analysis, and Brian's fixating on the part of the rule that talks about 20,000 is the easy part of it. The hard part is when it gets into the surface area used temporarily or permanently for docks, docking, or maneuvering of watercraft. And so if you use this table right here as an example, let's say that that's an outline of not only the finger and the dock and the water, that's one box. And so what Brian's saying is you have to put a box on either side for the water that it takes to maneuver those boats out. So one of them creates a 33,000 square foot use of the lake, of the surface. The other one creates one about half that. And so, of course, the VFW presented, and, well, Chris can give the recommendation, but they used the more conservative box in deciding that there wasn't one required. And so, to your point, Brian, asking the DNR if we have to put that additional square footage in there for the maneuvering just to get them out into the lake, if that counts, then obviously it would trigger that. Oh. That said, you would think that the DNR would have already done that and required it of them anyway. Yeah. So these are the things we don't know.
It's in a spin zone right now. They're coming back to us, and like we're going to go back to them. But well,
I do either way. Because I think we're fine either way. If we even told them to do it, I don't think that they would get approval yet this boating year anyway for what they want to do. It's too late in the season. But anyway.
So what the LUC had come up with, and we were saying waive the environmental worksheet and then just let the process go. But I'm fine with asking the DNR and seeing what we say, hey, we just want a little more input. Should we do this or not? Mm-hmm. Based on what we know for the calculation, or I think that's a fair ask.
To see how they measure, because that'll inform what we measure with in the future. So,
yeah, true. So, it's the appropriate action to table this, and
I would.
Okay. Are you okay? Are you okay with that? Thanks.
No, I got something else.
Okay.
Actually, I'll take that back. Yeah. I think you could probably accept the recommendation of the LUC and move forward unless the DNR thinks that more expansive view of the surface area is the way they would look at it. And then, so it's kind of a if then, right? So it doesn't have to wait another month to get action. Mm-hmm. So you've got the decision from the group based on what their understanding of that rule as applied to this situation is. And I think if that view is correct, then the motion would be correct too, to let them move on with their application. They haven't even made an application yet. This is pre-application work, right?
So this is really for next year.
Again, if they even applied tomorrow, I don't think that they'd have this extension in yet this year just because of the pace of the DNR. I mean, they'd be going through the same thing the city's going through, and all they're doing is sort of ratifying what's been in the water already. And the comment period on that isn't even up until, mid-May, something like that? Anyway, so I think that way at least it doesn't have to come back in May.
Do we make a motion to say no EAW if based on the recommendation from the DNR that we don't have to, or if they say we need to, then it's done?
You know, I think that's an option that Alan just suggested. I think it seems really unlikely that things will move at a pace that would allow them to get a new dock system in this year anyway. And so us taking the position of tabling it a month while we get clarification from the DNR seems reasonable. But I'm one voice on the board, so I'm
fine with it.
Other board members, are we fine tabling this until we talk to the DNR?
Then it might be good just to get some history of what's been going on with all this too, so we can all understand, because this was kind of the first I heard of it today with the LUC.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so
you want me to make that call to them then?
Yeah.
Mike?
In addition to our response to the DNR, the only diagram that I saw was the one we were sent that had the DNR, the old DNR permit and the request for the information, and then there was a scale drawing of the...
Talking to your microphone, Mike.
Scale drawing of the dock, and I think the DNR should know that scale drawing is 330 feet long and showing an AUDA of 360 feet, and it's measured from the shoreline, not the ordinary high water mark. And the dock is 300 minus, they're not including the walkway going out. So that sketch is not accurate as far as what we would approve. And if the DNR approves that sketch, then we're back behind the 8 ball.
Right.
So I think that has to be taken care of.
And just to make sure that we have a clear understanding of the order of events, I think step one would be not necessarily approving or not approving the dock layout. I think is an EAW required. And then once we get past that step, let's say an EAW is required, then the EAW would be performed or prepared, and then it would go down that path, and then the revised application would come before the board for comment. And if an EAW isn't required, then the amended permit would come before the board for comment prior to approval, just like at least Tally's was handled.
So they're asking, please provide a written determination on the need for environmental review.
Right.
So we're turning around and saying, what do you think? Right?
What we're asking is clarification of how to handle this part of it, the maneuverable water.
That's all.
And if they say, hey, yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll table this until the May meeting. And then, Alan, you're going to, and do we have a May 7th deadline, though?
That's for city.
That's for
Oh, got it. Okay, thanks for
city's application, nothing to do with VFW.
Okay. Okay, sorry, Chris.
That's not on here, and somebody from the board should be making comments.
On which one?
On the city of White Bear Lake permit by May 7th. Remember we talked about that in the LUC?
Oh, that was the one they have to get updated with the DNR?
To review what they want and to get comments back to them by May 7th.
I don't think we really made a decision on that. We just said we're just approving what their permit says.
I think can I take that for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, so the city of White Bear has made an application to the DNR to amend their permit to be in basically coordinated with what we've approved over the last couple of years. And basically the city is just memorializing that in their permit with the DNR. And looking at, and what the DNR has asked is if the board has any input on that amended application. The diagram provided by the city shows basically what we've allowed them to have out there. So it's in compliance with our permit within the 300 feet from the ADUA, number of slips and that kind of thing. I looked at it and I don't really see anything to comment on personally, but the board should make a decision if we want to provide any comments or not. And we need to make those comments or submit them by May 7th.
Go ahead.
I'll just say, make a motion that we have no comments.
Second.
Yeah, so we have a motion and a second to let the DNR know that we have no comments on the amended application. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
And then one last thing, Docks of White Bear application status. We've asked for a couple things. One, specifically a new diagram for the 300 foot right? We got to, because they're beyond 300 feet. The other one was just making sure we had the concerns addressed for the ADUAs, both on the White Bear or the Lions Park side and then Tallies. We just wanted to make sure that stuff lined up.
And do we have any questions for?
No, I'd like to talk, Brian. Want to get a minute?
The way that we handle our meetings is that these dock applications are taken up with the LUC, and then the LUC brings us recommendations.
I want to talk tonight.
And well,
good.
Thank you.
It's not.
I didn't want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Okay. Brian McGoldrick, 36 Moonlight Bay, Stillwater, Minnesota, docks White Bear Lake. And sorry I missed out. I was trying to work something out with the city of White Bear Lake earlier. But, I've got to admit that this is very troubling for me. And I got a email from the board that said, how many docks can you get in for 300 feet? And my response back was, it depends on the water level. And that triggered some memories for me of 2011 and 2012. In 2011, the board worked diligently with all the operators. It was a mess. I think the lake was at 919. At 300 feet, we had nothing. There was docks converging on docks. The beach was closed. The boat launches were a mess. And there was an article in the Minneapolis paper, and it said, White Bear Lake, the new norm. And it was Molly Shodine who did that. And then about 2 weeks later, I got an order of removal from the Department of Natural Resources. The Conservation District had allowed our docks, we were out about 600 feet, was what the Conservation District had, and then we had a T, which was 300 feet across. And then I was just revisiting it. I took my removal order to the board, because after I talked to Molly, she just said, Brian, it's not up to the DNR whether you're in business or not in business. And I thought, wow, that's pretty brutal. So the board directed Alan, I think it was the May 12th meeting of 2012, to write a letter, to the DNR. How can you do this? I mean, the board approved it. We've got some tough times in White Bear Lake, and there wasn't any response. So I got frustrated, and I found out where Tom Landwehr's office was. He was at the time the head of the DNR. And I went down there, and I waited in his office for 3 hours. And not his office, but in the reception area. And then at the end of that, the deputy director of the DNR came down, a guy named Dave Luthi, and he said, Brian, Tom's busy with the legislature. Would you talk with me? I'm head of all the hydrology, I'm the deputy director. I said, sure. And I went up into his office, and the first thing he said to me is Brian, our goal is not to try to put you out of business. We're working hard on trying to figure out what's going on in White Bear Lake, and to be candid with you, we don't have any answers right now. And we went around and around a few different things, and I said to him, in the newspaper, it's saying that this is the new norm for White Bear Lake. And I said, and if that's the case, then you need to redo all the OHW. He said, well, why would we do that? I said, well, it's supposed to be where the native plants stop and the aquatic plants begin. You got people with 500 feet, of grass in front of your house. I got mud. You're completely putting me out of business. And he said, well, what do you hope to achieve, Brian, if we spend millions of dollars on that? I just want to stay in business. I says, now the district's giving me out to 600 feet. They're in the low water, and if I can go out those 300 feet, it enables me to at least stay in business. We were down to, I think, 42 slips at that point in time. So over a 2-month period of working with the deputy director, working with this district, working with Ramsey County Sheriff, and we even got a 5-0 vote from the city council, they allowed us to be able to have, that dock configuration. And now it's kind of reminiscent of what's going to happen. I mean, we're at 922.74 now, Mike, and last year at this time, we were at a 1.5 foot higher. And I'm looking at right now, we're 20 feet from shore. And to be able to say, hey, the rule's hard and fast for all of it. because what the DNR did, why they changed my permit, because I actually have a DNR permit that on it says at 922, you can go out 600 feet and 300 feet across. And then they gave me permit lengths that this board was a part of, that buffers in between, because Dave finally came out, and I shouldn't say finally, but he came out and said, White Bear Lake is different than other lakes in the metro area, recreational lakes, and we can't treat it the same. We can't arbitrarily use the rule of 300 feet. Now, I'm not going to take credit for it, but I did mention to him, you got people that you're tagging. I think, Diane, you might even get a tag of tagging because they're mowing the grass or they're trying to get weeds or trying to have access to it. So the DNR did that. They changed my permit. You were all part of it. Now I sit here concerned because I don't have the depth of the VFW. I don't have the depth of the city. I don't have the depths of tallies. And what we do have is we have 720 feet, and we have 50 feet in between each one of our deals. Could we jam more in there? Is that safe? Is that safer to have 50 feet or 30 feet? If you've got a 22-foot boat, I don't even know how you turn it. So I sit there, different than everyone else in the district, is that I actually have a DNR permit that was approved. And I'm really concerned about just having a hard and fast rule, because you couldn't do that for any other part of the lake. I mean, you go over to Cottage Park, it's not the same as being in front of Delwood or in front of Manitou Island, So I don't think that it's fair to say you're going to be, Brian, not only the only one ever at the Conservation District that got denied a permit, but or Lake Minnetonka or anywhere else in the state of Minnesota. I don't want to fight anybody, but I just don't think that it's fair. I think that we ought to manage to the DNR permit. I have that DNR permit in place. And then I want to point out one other factor that's troubling for me, and that is, I'm the guy that called Mike Cerisi. Okay, there's no secret about that. And I thought long and hard about that, because at the same time, at the end of 2012, I'm looking at how do we elevate the concern of White Bear Lake above everything else? Because if you're living in Hibbing or you're living in Mankato or you're living in Winona, you may care about White Bear Lake, but it's not important to you. So my idea was how do you get it so you elevate that above everything else and try to get attention to fix our problem. So on the 20th time when I called Mike Cerisi and he hadn't answered, the last time I said to him, I said, Mike, this is Brian again. I know you're busy in trial, but an old friend of yours is dying. I mean, White Bear Lake, the beach has been closed for years. The launches are a comedy. I says, home values are getting absolutely crushed, and we just need some help. And I'm going to ask you two questions, Mike. First question, why'd you go to law school? The second question, what would your mother want you to do? And his comment, the next day he called me up, really, Bride, the mother card? And we started a relationship, and he brought an action against the DNR. What I didn't know and didn't anticipate, which has been a lot of trouble for me, is that both the city and the township decided to be interveners. Well, when you're an intervener, your law bills don't get picked up. Okay, so it hasn't been a fun journey with me dealing with the city on anything. I'm not going to go into the details. That's a separate issue.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but, in closing here, I think that we got two pathways which I think can get this resolved. One of them is we manage the DNR permits. The second one is, Mike, when you brought up the 2005 study that was done by the lake doctor, and in essence, what did it say? Well, it was concerned about the density in Commercial Bay. And the recommendation by the lake doctor was divide the boat slips up by linear frontage. You want to just go forward, do the right thing, divide them up by linear frontage, because there's nobody that would lay the docks out the way that they're laid out today. And if we really want to fix it, it's not a couple of buoys here, it's a couple of buoys there. Make a determination, because these boat slips are assets in Commercial Bay. Each one that you get has a value. And when you take some away or you add some, you're adding or subtracting value. We have a permit for 260 boat slips, and we have lengths that we have with the DNR, and I'd like to get that on the agenda next month to discuss that. Thank you.
Can I ask one clarifying question? Is there an update on the 2023 permit? I don't know if I picked that out of there.
No.
No, it's.
I didn't make that permit application. The board changed it.
We didn't change anything. We asked for some. We were presented. Somebody came and gave us a permit. You submitted a permit. We looked at it 3 months ago and we said, "Here's the changes we would recommend."
No, but I didn't agree to that. I mean,
you had somebody submit the permit.
But I sent in the permit. You can vote no.
We did. We asked here. What we wanted was these are the changes that we recommend, and we didn't even get any response back to even try to work through it. Like zero.
There's no update, so I guess.
I'm just saying, I have a DNR. I have a DNR permit, and you want to deny me, and I'm just confused by that and take money from us.
Yeah, Mike, just to be clear,
Brian,
thanks.
Or Bob, or
I've
Bill.
done that before. I called you my brother's name. Okay, just to be clear, my understanding is that so you have a DNR permit, but we have the option of being more limiting than the DNR permit. We can't go beyond the DNR permit, but to your example of the 260 slips, we don't have to, we're not obligated in any way to give you the 260 slips if we don't think that's the best approach. And historically, we've given you 240, I think is the number.
No, never. You've always given me the DNR permit, 260.
No? Yeah, okay. So, and listen, Brian.
When didn't you?
I don't recall that we ever did.
Well,
I know.
You did. Every year you did. You never deny me my DNR permit because it's the same thing. We put in an application.
Well, we don't really deny or not the DNR permit. Yeah, so I guess then it goes back to the question, and just to be clear, so you're not intending to submit another dock layout to be within the 300 feet and within the 240 slips. Your intention is to not submit a revised dock layout that meets those requirements?
Well, let me ask you this, because now, I don't know. I mean, meaning you want us to jam them in there, because we could get probably 300 in there if we had the same as the city or the same as Tallies. And now do I have to go back to the DNR to have that new layout put in? I have a perfectly good permit. We haven't had any problems with anything or anybody.
Okay. Can I just ask the question again? Is your intention to not provide a revised diagram or dock layout that meets the 300 feet ADUA and the 240 slips?
We have a DNR permit for 260 boat slips. And we have dock lengths attached to that. Put yourself in my shoes, okay? You guys are on a board, now they're going to take 20 slips away from you. It's $70,000. You annualize the revenue, that's a $700,000 hit to the shopping center. I don't have the authority to say that.
Can I just say, Brian, it's surprising with that kind of financial hit on your business that when we...
It's not my business, it's the shopping center.
When we notified you that, hey, this isn't going to work, this is what we would like, please submit, and it was crickets. And it seems like if it was such a concern to you that you would have responded to the board, you would have tried to work with the board. But what we've seen is just nothing, no response.
No.
And how do you explain that?
Well, I can explain this. How do you explain taking a DNR permit? How do you explain me being the only one in the state of Minnesota that gets denied the DNR permit? And then you take a look at, if we had the same as White Bear Lake, they got 324 feet, okay? We have 720 feet. One boat slip every 2 feet. We'd have 350. We think we're doing the right thing, adhering to the DNR permit, and now you want us to just be naked and say, you know what, the lake goes down, Bri? Oh, well, you're out of business.
No, I don't think anybody's asking you to be naked. Brian. I think it's really just we were hoping that you would choose to work with the board. And what we've seen is that that doesn't seem to be your approach. And so what we'll do is...
Have you ever taken from anybody else like this? I mean, I'm listening to add people that have nothing.
Everybody else, we've slipped. They're all at 300.
No, I'm talking about docks because we're in the shallower water.
The city lost. Everybody went
They
to
haven't
300.
lost any docks. They got 160.
Yeah, but they're all abiding by the same rules.
Yeah, we're just asking you to do the same, Brian. But thanks for your input. Thanks for your input.
I just don't think it's fair, Brian.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that it's reasonable that to assume that we're not going to get an updated dock layout for Docks White Bear, so we'll just have to, when we look at that.
Brian, I'll call Mr. Track in the morning, and I will get back to the board. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said, Brian.
The property is owned by the Track family. I will call Mr. Track up in the morning, and I will get back to the board.
Oh, thanks for that. Okay, so
There's
maybe
no
we'll see.
disrespect. It's just frustration.
Maybe we'll see.
Here's the thing, Brian. Like guys like Mark and I and the rest of the LUC, we want to help, right? But we haven't even gotten any feedback, even on the 300, or what we could do to even get you a good diagram. Zero. So it's like it would be a starting point even from 3 months ago if we would have said, like, let's look at something.
Chris, it was like I'm negotiating against myself.
Right.
You know,
Well, that sounds like you're representing somebody, though. I would.
What's going to happen if it goes down another foot? Are you guys going to work with me? Or
Yeah,
are you just
100%.
screwed, or-
We've worked I mean, that's what people have done in the past. We've worked with Commercial Bay when the water's gone down. When it's down 3-4 feet, they've worked with them.
So if I
right,
bring,
Keith? I mean,
Chris, if I bring you a diagram that has 260 slips on it, 300 feet, that's what you're looking for.
No, it's 240.
240 slips.
It's not 240. Why? I have a DNR for 260.
You know, Brian,
You don't have to abide with the DNR's permit.
Then how can you give tallies what you give them and the city what you give them? There's no rhyme or reason.
Well, here's what I'd suggest.
We have 720 feet.
Brian, here's what I would suggest is you make your business decision, and we will respond to it.
Thank you.
If you want to provide
That's
a new
fair.
diagram, provide a new diagram.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we'll act on it. Okay, any other discussion on this? And any other items for the LUC?
That was it.
I think that was it.
Good.
I was just going to say, obviously, I'm glad that he came. I'm glad he spoke. As Officer Bolin stated earlier, the lake was here first. And I know it's not fair. It's not fair for the homeowners, all right? If you have property, you move in, and there's risk. There's risk that the lake goes down. There's risk that it goes up.
I just think if you have rules, everybody should
risk
abide by the
right.
rules. It's as simple
So,
as that.
we can't, you know, I'm sorry that it's shallower. So obviously he's gone, but.
Well, he's in a hard part of the lake, you know. Okay, so anything else, I'm sorry, Chris, for the LUC?
That's it.
Yeah, I'll just to piggyback off of this is, do we need to discuss our actions? Because
I think you wait for the permit.
Going in
I think you wait
with
for
no
the permit, and then if the dock goes in, then Alan, we sit down and figure out what's next steps if it goes in without a permit.
Yeah, at some point it becomes an enforcement action. So.
Well, and I also think that if we can get something set up with the city and Docks of White Bear Lake, that maybe, you know, something will come out of that.
A long conversation, so hopefully it was a good one.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
I mean, with the city, of course.
Yeah. Lake Education Committee, Scott.
Yes. We had a meeting with Press Publications about having them carry forward our messaging this year. We had talked about putting out another brochure and mailing it to the homeowners. So they came back and said, well, we can do a lot of the design for you. We can put in a lake map. We can do a bunch of things, but it would be like their thing, and they would get advertising. They would do things the way they do like in Polk County, where they have a lake brochure, I don't know what you call
Publication.
Yes. And we would have a place to put our content in there. We haven't worked out all the details. Now, I think, Meredith, you were ready to present tonight?
I can present what we've been talking about. So Lake Education Committee and Sherry have been working on a public education content with specific focus on invasive species and other threats to the lake. It's in your board packet, the content we've developed. We believe that the prevention of new invasive species and eradicating our existing invasive species that can be eradicated, the invasive yellow iris, that's our primary focus of this content. Our primary audience is lakeshore owners and lakeshore users. We did meet with the press, as Scott said, last month, and they gave us a couple of options for publication on this information. One option was a brochure, and the other option was to purchase space in a new publication that they're creating specifically for White Bear, like a White Bear Lake Laker or something like that. I don't know what the name will be. There are certainly pros and cons to both of those ways to present our information, but the Lake Education Committee is going to recommend purchasing space in a publication because we believe it will reach a wider audience. It's also slightly less expensive and maybe has more staying power because the press is also going to write some articles about our work within the publication, also create a lake map and have some more information in there. The cost will be approximately $1,375. Let's see what else. And then the press just recently contacted us again and further encouraging us to use this option. They also are going to try to publish 2 more issues of this Laker magazine, and they were going to give us an option of having a page in each of those at no cost to be published this summer. So tonight we're hoping the board could help us decide what option suits the Conservation District better.
That was $1,375 for just with the one publication of...
Yeah, and then the 2 following publications, they weren't going to charge us for any content we'd put in those.
The two, so right now we'd be going, there'd be 3 total? Or?
3 total.
Cool. And how many people would that go out to?
I'm not sure. They're going to target their subscriber or their subscription base that are lakeshore owners. They're also willing to put it in a bait shop or library here or there. Do you want to add anything?
We could have copies if we get a Market Fest table again.
Yes.
We could have that out.
Yeah, they were talking about putting it in bait shops and, people who are actually utilizing the lake so that they would see what concerns we have, what the White Bear Conservation District is, what rules we have. We try not to make that part too preachy, but there are certain things that need to be abided by. So.
And can I just clarify, and sorry, I'm slow. So this Laker magazine, that's an option, but the 1375 option, that's where we get a publication that's basically us, and then we get a couple of freebies in this Laker magazine? Or can you just make sure I understand that right?
So the cost to publish or to buy space within this new publication they're creating is about $1,375. To do our own mailing with their help with the layout and stuff it would be more in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,000.
And the new Laker publication, it was going to be 4 pages, right?
It would be 4 pages in the first issue, and then 1 page in each following issue for free.
And how does the content that you've laid out already, which I have to say I'm very impressed with the content. Thank you to whoever did that. Thank you.
A lot of help.
So how much of this content would go in the first and how much would go in subsequent?
That's a question. I mean, I'd like to pursue it to see, if it, say, here, can you get this in these 4 issues? And if they hem and haw, then we go the other route. But it is more expensive. Certainly if we were to do this all ourselves, since I did this back in 2015, and it was a lot of work. We had to go to the counties to get mailing lists, and I had to find a printer, and it was probably more, I can't remember how much that cost, but we did itemize it out. It was less than a couple $1,000, but with a lot of work. And I'm quite taken with their view that they'll do a lot of this stuff for us. So I guess what I would recommend is that we try this and see how it works. The cost, I think, is reasonable. If it's $13.75, right? And we can give them this material that we've come up with and see if they'll do something reasonable with it. And if they can, I think it should be something we should do. See how it works, and then if it's less than ideal, then next year we do something else. But we've got the basis here.
So we may have created more content than we can use. And if we can't use it this year, I'll use it on our social media or other spots.
And the brochure is going to not just go to the lakeshore owners, it's going to go to a much wider audience.
This Laker magazine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that potential that, it will reach that many more people?
But it would go to the lakeshore owners.
Exactly.
Right, and that's our key thing. We'd want, and it sounds like they can do it. They can make sure all the lakeshore owners get it.
Okay. So is the question in front of us at the moment whether to use the Laker magazine or to have our own direct mailing?
Correct. Yes. I'm not sure that it's going to be named the Laker, but we could call that tonight.
Sorry.
I'm not
Whatever
familiar.
That
yes,
called,
we did reference it. There is a magazine that they have created called the Laker. It's in Wisconsin. And to decide which option suits us best, a directed mailer to lakeshore owners or to subscribe to purchase space in this publication. And if we decide on something tonight, then I would begin to start sharing our content with them so that they can start thinking about the layout and things like that. Give us some feedback on that, and then thinking about the content that their writers are going to create. They're going to write a story about our history or write a story about a board member or whatever they deem interesting or they think that.
Yeah, they have a lot of creative control that we would give up in that sense.
But our material will be on pages with our logos. It'll be clear that this was written by us.
And just to be clear, too, there won't be advertising. Throughout the publication it would be, but not on our pages.
Yeah. And does the Lake Education Committee have a suggested preference?
Yes, we are recommending purchasing space in a publication because we think it has more staying power. People will be more interested in the content, and it likely has a wider audience. And it's a more reasonable cost.
And I think the cost would be less, though I think I would like approval. Well, they're saying $13.75, but I'm kind of wondering if, we might need a little more for who knows what. So I would like to go ahead with this, with the stipulation that we spend no more than $2,000.
$2,000. Okay.
Just to give us a little flexibility to get this out this summer.
Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion to all of this? I can do it.
I can do it too. I'd like to make a motion to spend up to $2,000 out of the Lake Education Committee budget for a public education campaign.
Specifically, using this.
Specifically, purchasing space in a publication to be published by the White Bear Press.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I'll just start. What's the Lake Education Committee? Is the $2,000 within your budget, or will you need reserve funds?
Yeah, I'm not. It should be pretty close because we haven't spent any money.
I think it's $2,500, isn't it?
The only other thing in the education budget is the website. I think maybe there's. I don't want to misspeak on that, but that's like $600.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm trying to find out where I would find it, but I'm not seeing. I know there is one. LLC, is it on this side? Treasurers?
I'll mention while she's looking too, that we'd like feedback from the board. If you have feedback from us sometime in the next 10 days or so, if that's reasonable. And then we're going to work on getting a final draft to you for the May meeting.
Public info education. Input on content.
2793. And I've spent 1,100, $5,000.
I'm looking for estimate expenditures for 2023 is $5,072. $5,072.
Is the budget?
Yeah. Do you see that, Chris?
And what we spent, actual expenditures, is
Have we? I
2,600?
haven't looked at what we spent so far. What number is it?
Do you know
Jerry?
what line item that is?
6050.
Thank you.
I think that's it. General public info / education. Looks like we may have spent 123.
6050.
Yeah, I'm not sure this
We've
is
spent
hidden.
$250,
$250.
according to our treasurer's report this year.
Okay, so it seems like there's more than enough money in the budget. And did everybody just catch Meredith's last little bit? And that was they're requesting input from the board members on the content within 10 days.
Yeah, and we'll start working with press publications right away, just to see if it hits the fan or something, I guess.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table to approve up to $2,000 for this item. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. How would you like people to get their suggestions to you?
By email to the committee. Is that fine to go to all of us? Scott, Susie, and I, and
We'll
Sherry.
see, because I told Meredith I'd pick up some of the editing if it's required.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for all your efforts. It
good.
should be really
It's
nice.
awesome.
Yeah, it's great content. Okay. Further LEC stuff.
For this month, the social media, I have a post coming up about Earth Day, and then I'm going to do a lake level and temperature, and then I have some free weeks. If anyone has any ideas, you can email me.
Okay, the only other education item, I guess, is that I and Mike have been attending Rice Creek Watershed workshops, and what we did in what Mike's workshop is coming up with items, and my workshop was prioritizing them. So we got to vote with little dots, if you're familiar with that sort of thing. And I haven't seen any outcome from that, but I will share it with the board when we get it. You know, essentially, what should their priorities be in response primarily to climate change kind of things, rising water levels, more variability in things, and so we figured out a bunch of things, how that affects the infrastructure that they're concerned about. So that's it.
Okay. Any questions for the Lake Education Committee? Okay. And thanks to you and Mike for participating in that, taking the time. Treasurer's report.
Treasurer's report. You have the treasury report here. I see we got the first half payment from the City of White Bear, which is kind of nice. Gives us a little money to work with. Expenditures are our normal monthly expenditures. I would like to make a motion to approve checks number 4832 through 4836.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve those checks. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, passes.
Next is the Minnesota Lakes and Rivers membership renewal. I don't know how long we have subscribed to it. It's a email that I get, and I don't think I'm on the subscriber side, but I think it's something that I'm going to ask you to renew the membership. It's $100.
Correct. I think we've done it for at least 3 years.
Okay. And then we could forward it to every board member. What it is he puts together a newsletter, and he talks only about lake associations and lake issues and things coming before the legislature that have to do with lakeshore situations, whether it's taxes on lakeshore cabins or mostly invasive species, water, low water, high water, different types of things. It's all lake stuff. And then he talks about how it affects, how it gets to the legislature and what they do if they're going to act on it. And if you want to get involved and call your legislator, which we're not promoting as a board. He's a lobbyist, but he's a lobbyist for exactly what we do.
Yeah, we look at their list of accomplishments, like, they secured $850,000 for Lake Association AAS management program. It's stuff that we are interested in.
Yeah, so I wouldn't hold being a lobbyist against them at all. It's what we do. And for $100, and maybe you could figure out a way that all the board members would get his newsletter, because it's interesting.
I think you can just sign up for it, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I get it.
So I'll make a motion that we renew our membership for Minnesota Lakes and Rivers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to renew the membership. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes.
Okay, next thing is the budget. You have to start thinking about the budget. You have a copy of it, and you've just saw it tonight because it just showed up at your spot. Let's call it a wish list for next year. Things like, lake education, they want to spend some money. The categories, maybe we could expand on a few of them to get a little more specific. But if any board members have, after looking at this, see any areas where maybe we should spend some money or create something new, contact Sherry or me, and we will certainly bring it up for discussion. I will be contacting each of the committee chairmen because they spend the money, and if you're not on a committee, maybe you'll have an idea that we can start your own thing. But anyhow, think about it, look at it, read through. At least by reading it, you'll know what we do and where the money comes from. It's an interesting thing, and there's more on the back side when you turn it over. I like the way Sherry saves paper. It helps the expenses. And then we will put together a budget.
Yeah, just the big picture on that is that typically what we do is we try to come up with a good draft budget in May, and then we have some discussion, and then at our June meeting, we will vote on the budget for the next year, which would be 2024. I got that right, eh? Any questions for Mike?
I just have a question. We discussed how from the survey that the League of Women Voters had about communicating with our cities and having them have input into the budget, where we would give them the draft budget to comment on. And so I'm wondering, we did talk about that, I do believe. Is there a deadline that you want this information? So are we going to put it back in May? You're going to look at it? Is that it's a draft in May?
True.
Did you just say? So we'll finalize or get a draft, and will that be sent out to the city for review afterwards? So we can approve it in the June meeting?
I think we provide all the input.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember the extent of that discussion, Sherry, and it seems like where we ended up was our process is to develop this budget and submit it to the cities, and then at that point they can always come back to us and talk to us about items that they're not in agreement with.
After it's finalized, you mean?
True.
Okay. I just want to be clear because I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah.
After it's approved.
It's approved, that's right, in June.
Because we can change it if we think we should. But if we don't, it's already approved.
Okay.
When do we actually receive money from the cities?
We're doing it right now. So we send out invoices January 1st. It didn't happen this year because I was new, but we send them out January 1st. I've already received 2 other municipality checks that will go in for next month. So hopefully they'll all be in by June or July.
Okay.
And then they'll receive a new notice for community assessments for 2024.
Diane?
Okay. So the reduced amount for 2023 estimated revenue from the cities is based on what we voted on before, right? We receive, okay.
Yeah, what's in the budget. And the reason that we have to approve the budget by the end of June is because we have to send the budget to the cities by July 1st. So that's the reason why we do it in June, at our June meeting.
Okay. So any further discussion on that? Any questions for Mike? Okay. Thank you, Mike. Board council report, Alan?
Thank you, Chair and Board. No citations this month. Needless to say, we were pretty embroiled with surveys and other things like that. Shout out to Ramsey County for working with us basically to get the contract in place for this year. Mr. Tombago was quite helpful, and as well as Megan, which is the contract manager for Ramsey County, as well as the county attorney that I worked with. So, trivia. Does anyone know what a CPPB is? If you have that behind your name.
No.
I'd never seen it before, so rather than keep everyone in suspense, that is a certified professional public buyer. And that is Megan's official accolade behind her name. So she's a contract manager, but apparently you can get a certification to be a public buyer for public entities, which I'd never come across before. So anyway, with that in mind, I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Alan?
And I'll get back to, well, I'll push it through Sherry when I find out what Mr. Scanlon thinks about measurement for VFW and what we do next for that. So that'll be on my list for tomorrow.
Okay. Any questions for Alan?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. So we're on to item 11, announcements, adjournment. I don't have any announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
Just when we were going to take a photo tonight, just to let you know, we were on our website, we were going to put a photo of all of you together, not just individual pictures, because we are going to get White Bear Lake Conservation District emails for you, because as a governmental official, you should be able to be accessed. And so it was tried in the past. We're going to try it again. So next month, if everybody is here, on our next meeting, May 16th, we'll have a photo taken of the group. And Alan, I guess you're the primo photographer that might do that.
I did volunteer to do it, and we were going to do it. Sherry and I kind of did the pinky promise that we'd get it done, but once the agenda dropped, it was just too much. So to have everyone have to sit for a cameo now, look at y'all.
We're missing Mark, though.
And I will say, I appreciate everybody's patience and hanging in there for the meeting and for such a detailed agenda. So would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Good job.